Well, Kaya, and good morning. Before the formal proceedings are opened, I'd like to run through just a couple of welcomes and some housekeeping. It's really lovely to see so many friends of Shelter WA, members of our community sector, representatives from all levels of government, and really importantly, lived experience advocates and people in our community who are passionate about making change. It was pretty cold this morning, and as a Melbourne girl, and I know there's some Melbourne Knights, former Melbourne Knights in the room, it was a bit chilly, so I hope you all made it with your rugged up coats. But I can assure you that this morning is well worth it. So I'm Lisa Kazalac, and at the moment, I'm acting CEO of Shelter WA, but my normal hat I wear is Head of Policy and Sector Development, and I'm here representing Michelle McKenzie, our CEO, who joins us from hotel quarantine, in fact, at the Mantra on Murray Street, I believe. So we'd just like to say good morning to Michelle. Yep. So you would have realised that it's COVID, so we have some social distancing rules, and today we've limited the room to 60 attendees face-to-face. I think we've got between 60 and 70 here this morning. And I understand that we've got over 50 on the Zoom webinar, or thereabouts, I've just been informed. Yeah. So that's amazing. And isn't it wonderful what we can do with technology at the moment? Some of the housekeeping though. So if you could please turn your mobile phone off, or at least to silent, that would be marvellous. I just did mine as well. In the event of an emergency, we will be guided by the fabulous staff here at the platform, so we will just follow them in an orderly manner and make our way out of the building. Bathrooms are located through the foyer, and the women's are on the left and the men's are on the right. And I just wanted to alert you that we are taking photos and video across the whole week, so just be mindful of that, and if you don't want to be in anything, you just let us know. So today is a virtual and a face-to-face event, so we are going to, won't be able to see the people on screen, but we're going to imagine that they're here with us in spirit. I would now like to introduce the man of the hour, which is Mr. Gordon Cole. Mr. Gordon Cole is the chair of Homelessness Week 2020. He's also a board member of Shelter WA and our MC for today's proceedings, and a proud Noongar man. Gordon won't mind me saying that. He's also a business leader and a community leader in WA, and he's the driving force behind this year's theme, which is Aboriginal homelessness and how we end it, in conjunction with the Danduli Kulini Festival. I now welcome Gordon to commence the formal proceedings for today. Thank you, Gordon.
Thanks, Lisa. When I guess I was asked to be the chair of Homelessness Week, I didn't hesitate. I thought it was, you know, if not me, well, then who else would want to do it? But it's fantastic to be here this morning and to be amongst you all, and obviously to deal with an issue in our community that is, you know, all too prevalent, and one that needs to be addressed, and one that has to have a lot of focus on what we do. And I want to acknowledge everyone's work in that space. But before we get on to further things, I'd like to introduce and welcome an elder in our community to give us a welcome to country, and someone who's very dear to our community and has done a lot of work in the healing and the stolen generation and other areas within our community over many decades, and that is Mr. Fred Penny.
That'll be me. When you said the man of when she said the man of the hour, I thought she was talking about me. But Gordon got in the way. Yeah, it's nice and early. Yesterday I left Narrogin at 6 o'clock in the morning to get up to Perth, and it was 2 degrees down there, and it's early again today. I'll be sleeping in tomorrow. So, yeah, thanks for welcoming me to welcome this, your workshop. Is a workshop? formal launch? Okay, yeah. Bit about myself. I'm a Noongar man from the southwest, and from the I use traditional words. Wilman, Gurung, Menang. That's my people, and it's normally from from the upper Great Southern right down to Albany, and so just as a to I suppose line up with what this is about. Why you're meeting is the homelessness. Well, I'll just let you know that also there's a lot of Aboriginal people and myself that were taken away as a young person. Well, I was taken away as a 3-year-old from Narrogin and put in a place for 12 years. So that was my experience of homelessness. Home being not being at home, you know what I mean? You had the shelter there, but home wasn't there. So that's my I suppose my take on homelessness. I don't think I've ever been homeless, as in I haven't had a roof over my head, but homeless as in being away from home. And I suppose the people are affected in the same way because I ended up having issues because of that. But thank God I'm through that now. The taxi driver that brought me in, he was from Afghanistan, and he spoke to him. He said that he started talking about culture and traditional things, and excuse me, and he made me, at the end of the talking to me, he made me realise that traditional things or traditional ways are important to hold on to, because we're living in a very economically driven world, where the old ways are disappearing, and it's becoming very, very secular, I suppose, and for me that really that hit home with me, because I've been coming that way as well. I've been letting go of the old ways, and but it really, even just in that moment, it made me realise that some of the old ways we need to hold on to. Is that right? Yeah. Don't get rid of them all. And so anyway, that was my little light bulb moment this morning, and so I'll hold on to that, because I've been more contemporary, but I'm not going to start doing a dance up here and take my shirt off and do the traditional dance, but I'm going to really appreciate the traditional. And the reason I'm saying that is because, like I said to you before, I was brought up in a mission, and 12 years in a mission, and obviously we lost a lot of our culture, our traditional ways, our connections. So we had to relearn. When we came out of the mission. Gordon knows what I'm talking about. He's would have had family in missions as well. But it's okay. Things happen, but we move on. And what I always say to people is that as long as you've got support, you need support. And it doesn't have to be family, it can be strangers, as long as the strangers are, their heart's in the right place. And there's a whole group of people here, supporting homeless people at the moment. So, you know, as a Noongar man in my language, traditional language is Noongar Wank. I say Kaya Wanju Nonakut. That means, you know, obviously I welcome you all to here today. And I welcome you to the traditional land of the Noongar people. And in particular, this area here, which is the traditional home of the Wajak. So I'd just like to say have a great or Murich day, Murich Kerala, and hope you work together and achieve the outcomes that you're looking for today. So on that, I'll just say Borawank and see you next time. Maybe we can talk again next time. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Penny, or Uncle Fred. Can I call you Uncle now? Okay, so I'll call you Uncle. When I call someone Uncle, and I've known Mr. Penny for some time, it makes me feel a lot younger. And yeah, so thank you very much for that. And it's always great that our elders and our people do the welcome and acknowledge. And I guess also in relation to that, I'm a Wajak Noongar from this part of the world. And I guess to all those people out there in Zoom land, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations people where you are, throughout Western Australia and throughout the country, if you're joining us. So it's very special, and welcomes and acknowledgements of country is something that sometimes can be glossed over. I think it's important to understand the significance of them and what they actually mean. And it's not just a process that happens just to kick an event off or a forum or a function. It's actually a process and an acknowledgement of a vast and long history of place and people. And it's something that it's become part and parcel of what we do. And it's a good time to reflect on our old people and all our grandparents, all the people in this room and around that's linking into this process. If we think about the lives all our grandparents had compared to what we have today, I think we've got it pretty good in some cases, and it's always good to reflect on country and people. In moving on, I'd also like to acknowledge all the dignitaries that are here. In the topic of homelessness, I guess there's no more significant dignitaries than those that are experiencing homelessness at any point, whether it's current, in the past, and possibly impending. So it's always important that we acknowledge the dignitaries, which is a word used for that conjures up a picture that someone's very important because of status or their socio-economic standing. But I guess it's about acknowledging people wherever they are and whatever position they find themselves in. And I guess many of our people that are experiencing homelessness, to me, are dignitaries in their own right. And when I frequent particularly the city environment, I come across a lot of dignitaries. And I want to acknowledge them throughout this important week of homelessness. And a key dignitary in the room here is the Honourable Simone McGurk, who's a Minister for Child Protection, Women's Interests, Prevention of Family and Domestic Violence, Community Services, a State Labor Member for Fremantle. As Minister in the McGowan Labor Government, Simone is working to establish a whole-of-government approach to tackling the scourge of family and domestic violence, and is ensuring that our states invest in children during the critical years to build stronger families and communities. So I'd like to welcome Simone McGurk to the table. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good morning. Great to be with you. Thanks so much, Gordon. I'll see if I can balance everything. I brought up a few documents. It may have been a little ambitious. And to all of those of you in the room and to those of you not in the room but joining us, I hazard a guess still in your pyjamas. Great to be with you. Thank you very much, Gordon, for your introduction, and Fred too. Nice to meet you, and thank you for your welcome to country. And can I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we meet, the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my very deep respects to their elders past and present. And of course, having Gordon chair today's proceedings and also play such a prominent role in his organisation, Noongar Maya, is really making the point, I suppose, that that we have a particular obligation, I think, to understand what homelessness means for our First Nations people, who, on so many measures, we need to do better, to have better outcomes, and for a happy and healthy and safe future. Can I also acknowledge Diane Evers from MLC, member for the Southwest Region, and member for Corrine, Tony Kristicevic, here today. We have also Michelle McKenzie, who, as was said, is joining us through a hotel room in isolation, and Kathleen Gregory, who's the chair of Shelter. Seeing Kathleen here, she might be home in her pyjamas. John Berger, the executive officer of the WA Alliance to End Homelessness, and Josh Serafini and Lizzie George, who I think we're going to hear from people who have experienced homelessness. And as Gordon said, it's important that we understand exactly what people are going through if we want to try and eradicate homelessness. And can I also acknowledge Nerali Binder, who's Binder, thank you, a Badama Noongar Yamachi woman, for her artwork that's here, that's being displayed during Homelessness Week. It's fantastic. So what a 6 months it's been. There was already felt like we had a lot on our plate, and I know many of you who are working in the social services sector generally, in frontline services, understand that. But obviously, with the pandemic, there's been a whole raft of new challenges that have been thrown at us. And I thought, as Fred was speaking, how true that is, that where we've sort of traditionally looked at a kind of economic framework to decide how we're going in life, the pandemic has focused on us on what really matters, and that is our connection to each other, our basic safety. And also, people may have heard me make this point before, good governance, good leadership in the people that we elect, and good public social systems, health systems, support systems and the like, and regulation to make sure that people are, and particularly the most vulnerable, but everyone is safe. So the pandemic hasn't just challenged the state government, the federal government, or the sector, the social services sector or organisations. It's challenged us as individuals. It's challenged us as a whole community. But as these challenges continue to emerge and demand responses, we're continuing to see new issues play out. And we've seen that with the border debate that I'm sure many of you are following at the moment. Thankfully, in Western Australia, we have avoided community transmission of COVID-19, and we acknowledge, I think, that would have been disastrous for the people that are the focus of us during Homelessness Week, those people who are sleeping rough or in precarious forms of homelessness. So for many of us in the room who are committed to this work all year round, day in, day out, this work hasn't stopped. It's tough, it's demanding. It actually requires real heart and commitment, and it often goes unacknowledged. So partly what I'd like to do on behalf of the state government today to launch Homelessness Week is to thank all of you for doing the work that you do, either in running organisations and making sure that those in the front line are supported in the work that they do, for those in the front line for doing the work that they do, for those people who volunteer or are interested in seeing improvements in service delivery or just connection with people. They might volunteer on a board capacity and the like. Thank you for all the work that you do. I don't need to quote statistics today. I think they've been well versed. And one of the challenges in homelessness is a dearth of reliable information. By its nature, people can be difficult to identify. It can be difficult to identify people and what situation they're in. But I think we all understand that we have a problem that is significant and is, as it is, unacceptable. I made the point today, we were talking to West TV, and I was making the point that at the centre of this are individuals, and to address homelessness, we need to appreciate that each one of those people has a different story. They had a different journey to get to where they are, and they will have a different answer or different set of supports that are needed if they're not going to understand homelessness. So at the centre of our response needs to be a coming together of all sorts of different specialty services and supports to centre around those people and to walk with them in the journey to health and security. I also think it's worth reflecting on the progress that we've made together. Just 3 years ago, when we first came to office, we had 2 separate national agreements funding homelessness, and they were one of which was renewed annually. We had services that were funded by 2 separate, funded by 2 separate state government agencies. There was little or no direction on improving the system and supports from our community. We heard your feedback about how the system needed to change and how we needed to work reform. And in fact, I must say that in regard to homelessness, we also saw what was demonstrated in the sector in regard to a level of cooperation. I think are very grateful for that. Fast forward 3 years and we see, thanks to the work of everyone physically in the room and virtually in the room, we've made big progress. We have 1 national agreement committed to over the forward estimates. We have 1 agency, 1 state government agency in the Department of Communities delivering funds, and I acknowledge Emma Colombera, who's from the department, who's here today and who's worked in this area. We have a clear plan to collectively improve our effort with significant work already underway, driven by evidence of what actually works. In the last 12 months alone, together we've launched the state's first 10-year strategy, delivered through an action plan involving multiple government agencies, and there's copies of the strategy as you come into the room today. We've secured $72 million for the new homelessness initiatives, including Common Ground and the first Housing First homelessness initiative, the state government's funding. We've secured $150 million to increase social housing stock. And not only have we managed our way, we are managing our way through an unprecedented global pandemic in COVID-19, but we've started to make inroads in linking our response to that pandemic to what we know are evidence-based and more systemic changes in the future. And I think that's an important acknowledgement, not just an immediate response, but also being informed by that good groundwork that was done previously. So many of you will be aware that there is $159 million that has now been specifically made available through Lottery West to not-for-profit organisations and frontline delivery services in response to COVID. We've secured an additional, on top of the $150 million, an additional $319 million for a housing stimulus package as part of the recovery plan. And I'll just wave around this recovery plan as well. This is available online, but it does outline, while there are some areas of improvement, it's a very broad document. It does outline the general areas that we're working on in regard to making sure that that we're in the best position possible to keep people in jobs and to keep the economy ticking over while we deal with the pandemic. And as part of that recovery plan, as I said, there's $319 million for a housing stimulus package, and there's $6.8 million to fund critical homelessness services and financial counselling. We've fast-tracked the crucial projects like Housing First, our homelessness initiative that I mentioned earlier, and many of you would have secured the location for the state's first Common Ground facility in the city. So there was one thing that I think we should be most proud of as a group, and that's the way that we've seen not only the state government, the sector and the community, but individuals all coming together at this time of very complex need that the pandemic has given us. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of Katie Stubley and Jethro Secombe, who have starting to do the work on no wrong door approach. And that's a key recommendation of the 10-year strategy. So it's great to see all those different threads, as I've said, coming together. The groundwork is done and now we're able to implement that and where possible fast track it. And I'm pleased to confirm today that the government has invested $2.25 million to implement the no wrong door approach work through the procurement of an online platform. It'll be directly guided by people, by the experience of the co-design process and the experience in this room of people in the service providers as well as lived experience, and it's ready for procurement. This reform alone will transform our homelessness service sector system and lead to better outcomes for the people we seek to serve. These are important action steps that are captured in the first 5-year action plan to focus and drive our efforts in regard to homelessness. That action plan is available on the Department of Community's website, and there are 58 specific actions, and I'm pleased to say that about half of those are already underway. And as I said, some of them are being fast-tracked as response of COVID. I was reading this morning The West, and I see Gordon has written an op-ed there in regard to the areas that we need to think about when we're thinking about Homelessness Week today. And I just, it was in regard to ACOs and Gordon. I'd just like to quote something that he said. He was talking about the need to involve Aboriginal controlled organisations in these solutions. And he said, it's about acknowledging we're all driven by different experiences, but we agree to work together to create equity for all. It's my hope that we can dig deep to achieve this, because when we do, all Australians will have much to be proud of, including the homes that are responsive and adaptive to cultural needs. And that's really what it comes down to understanding that there are individuals at the centre of this, that those individuals will feel at home, not just have a shelter, as Fred said, but actually have a home, although those homes will look different, and we're able to deliver that and give them the supports that they need. On this cold morning this morning, we should be focused on thinking about those people who don't have a home. So again, can I thank you all for the work that you do today. I hope this is a productive week, Homeless Week 2020, and look forward to seeing you as the events of the week play out. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Simone. We'd like to give you this Noongar fire stick.
Oh, right.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you very much, Minister. As I was sitting there listening, I was thinking about we've had many representatives of government speak to many people over the journey for many decades, and think about resourcing, which is much needed. It's also, the ministers of the past have also mentioned resources and initiatives, and they're fantastic. But I guess the principle-based approach around the cultural elements of First Nation people, if they're not considered and if they're not included, then a lot of times the funding doesn't hit the mark. And we'll be here in another time with another minister, in another launch of another Homelessness Week, and hopefully not talking about the same things. Hopefully that the figures that were just announced, fantastic, and some of them are big figures, they will not work unless the principle based philosophy and framework of the cultural requirements of this country's First Nations people will not be met. Once they are included and our people are involved in the process, then it will work. It's proven it will work. And we, I guess, across the board, look forward to working with the Minister and the McGowan government in addressing this issue that we have before us. So I thank you very much, Minister McGurk, for your presentation. I'll talk for the next, I've got someone who's going to tell me to hurry up at points, I guess, through this next 10 minutes or so, but I guess I'll do a speech here, and I want to acknowledge Michelle, who's in, what is it called, quarantine, isolation, and I'd also like to acknowledge Michelle McKenzie, CEO of Shelter WA, who's worked tirelessly in my 18 months or so being involved with the Shelter WA board, and I just want to acknowledge her work and tenacity across the sector, but also the willingness to open the mind to work with the First Nations people around homelessness and housing in general. So I'd just like to publicly acknowledge that. This is also a momentous moment for me here today as we commence Homelessness Week 2020. I see this as the start of a yarning, or in other words, what we do from now on is a non-judgmental, easy sharing of views and thoughts with each other throughout this important week. In our community, we have a yarning circle, or in the flash word, dialogue circle, where we share our stories and from that, the development of knowledge. The potential solutions to the current challenges will not always be immediately clear, and I encourage you to share stories and talk with those around you. This will lead to different perspectives and maybe even solutions. There is an old experiment that says that in a contest between two groups of people, one extremely intelligent and learned and the other totally diverse, it's the latter that will come up with the better solutions to a problem. An article in the Scientific American tells us why. Not only because people with different backgrounds bring you information, simply interacting with individuals who are different forces groups members to prepare better, to anticipate alternative viewpoints, and to expect that reaching consensus will take effort. In other words, we are ready for you. But it is more the case that we are ready to reach that understanding with you throughout this week. Our people, First Nations people, and in this part of the world, the Noongar people, are in this room and they are willing to share their cultural stories and to share with you the differences between our cultures to develop a greater understanding. I'll give you an example where it comes to the difference in our culture. Whenever there is talk about Aboriginal housing, you often see footage that depicts unkept housing in remote communities. From one perspective, this would look like the people who own them are neglecting them. But when you sit down and chat about what is going on, you will find Aboriginal peoples don't recognise that many in their home, in your home, you may see by others as being overcrowding. Because to cater for family is part of sharing and caring, it is a philosophy ingrained in our mort, or family. If you have a family member come and knock on your door, what do? You let them in, give them a bed, put them up. So in Aboriginal culture, we house all our family. We house sisters, aunties, uncles, grandparents and their family and so on. This is what we do. If you open your door and 10 or so of your relatives are there, you might respectfully suggest there is a good Best Western or a motel nearby. But we don't and cannot do that. And then if you have a house which is not suitable, as in the housing design is not responding to those cultural needs, for instance, there are some single family dwellings that do meet the needs of some Aboriginal people, but not for all. And when you have a culture entrenched in poverty, a lack of economic opportunities with barriers to language and education, then this contributes to insufficient housing options for Aboriginal people in WA. So in our yarning, I encourage you to seek to better understand and demand the demand for housing supply for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, now and into the future, and to build fit-for-purpose housing. Ask how can culturally-led and culturally designed solutions will help end homelessness for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Think about a housing system that is people-focused and provides equal access and choice. linking housing with wellbeing and support where it is needed? And how can you let us in to develop a housing continuum that empowers Aboriginal people to take up opportunities or provide support when and where they need it? Because currently the system is broken and there is a need for a paradigm shift. Change is needed to increase Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's control and participation at all levels of government, industry and community sector. And what I mean by this is for the social sector in housing and homelessness to have a paradigm shift of power. How it operates from the governance right through the operations to the front line and even to the reception. There needs to be more Aboriginal participation in it. Apply a cultural lens to it. This is why for Homelessness Week 2020 we have chosen an emphasis on how culturally led and supported design will deliver a housing and homelessness system that empowers Aboriginal people and builds on our culture. We all in here know we cannot just keep running soup kitchens and overnight shelters. It's too late by then. If you're at that stage, the system has failed you. I used to think we were managing homelessness well, but since I got involved a lot more, I keep seeing the statistics going the wrong way. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in WA were 3.7% of the total population in 2016, yet 29.1% of us, the Indigenous, make up the homelessness population. And a quarter, 1 in 4 of our people are presenting at specialist homeless services for help. And in WA overall, 68.7% of Aboriginal Australians, compared with 56.1% of non-Aboriginal Australians, reported that they slept rough most of the time. All there in the ABS statistics. Recently, I was in the city and spotted a family member who was homeless. We had a yarn and we are a similar age, but he looked older. And you could imagine what I was thinking when I work in the housing industry. He said he was all right and I gave him a couple of dollars. I left my phone number with him and he was in a position where he felt he was okay. The encounter made me ask myself what I was doing in housing. It made a focal point for me to create change, starting with homelessness and to look after other people. And I know this is something we all want to do in this room. You wouldn't be here today if this wasn't the case. So come and have a yarn with us and have a think about how we can help create a paradigm shift. Change is on the horizon, and as I ask that we make it a good change for all peoples. And I guess furthermore to this speech, it's around understanding where people are at. It's about understanding, and the principles I speak about our culture, it's a culture that's been here for, I don't know, 120,000 years, I think the latest carbon dating technology tells us. Every time they improve this carbon dating, it pushes back the occupation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country. So when you have generations, thousands and thousands of generations of people that have sustained themselves in the environment that they belong to, something must have worked. We have the blueprint. It's in the First Nations people. And I think the paradigm shift and the control aspect of that needs to be increased in terms of our participation into the system. Governments are fantastic at resourcing, and those that have resourced in this space for well over 100 years have been resourced for all that time to cater for the disadvantage of our people. What I'm putting the challenge out to government and to the sector is, how do we make it work, and how do you include at all levels of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander participation in the sector of homelessness and housing, where we can take a rightful place and to address the issue that's impacting our people and our community. So it benefits not only all West Australians, but everyone in Australia. Thank you very much. I think we're showing a video now, is that correct?
I've been on off streets since I was 16. Sometimes you get moved along by the rangers and then you got to go find somewhere else to sleep. But I kept coming back here. This is actually the only place I know where I can actually sleep. My parents were heavily into drugs and just being like abandoned and stuff like that. That's where most of my trauma comes from, my childhood. Experiencing domestic violence, like seeing my mum get bashed all the time. Being homeless shouldn't be part of you, you know? Well, for me, it's part of me now, which is kind of sad. Growing up, I never really learned a lot about my culture. Now I know I'm not so empty because I know who most of my family are and where I come from. Knowing that I'm despite your colour or your race, we all should be treated like human beings, despite our differences. I'd love to live in a house. I was just being on the streets too long and I just need help, you know. They're transitioning from the streets to houses. I'm just trying to make support and stuff. Well, my dream is to win a lotto and buy a big house and all those people come live there. Safety is the biggest thing, feeling safe. But that's never going to come true, is it?
This is my home. My little red car, yeah, maroon car. It's where I sleep every night. I've been homeless now 5 years. They handed a 15-year-old child a piece of paper to say they were changing the locks at 10 o'clock the next day. We took just a bag of clothes that we had with us. Which is unbelievable. I couldn't believe that they could do that. This is my bed. I laid the sheet down. I take the headpiece off so that I've got a bit more room up here to lay down. I drive around during the day and then just park up at night and pray to God that I'm safe for the night. And I'd be happy with it. Just a one-bedroom place anywhere. I'd take anything. Yeah, as long as I had a roof. All the thoughts running through my head. If only I had a house. I could have a hot meal at night, warm bed, have my grandchildren over, my children over. Would mean the world to me. Raised 5 girls of my own, pretty much all their life, so I'm a very independent person, so I don't like to ask for help much, never have. But it's time to now, yeah.
My son and his partner, they were sleeping in there, in that cubicle there, to get away from the storm. Myself and my daughters had to sleep in the corner in there, keep ourselves warm and huddle up. In the mornings, it was less than 3 to 4 degrees. I'm very proud to represent the Indigenous culture of our country. I've seen my family suffer on the street for too long, and I've seen my daughters and my children go through too much through an unjust system. I've suffered within the system myself. It's just like the same repeat of cycles, deaths in custody, deaths in prison. If I had a home, I would, you know, support the needs for and educate my grandchildren for the cultural education that they missed out, like the Dreamtime story. And I want to obtain that for my children to have the same cultural knowledge that their father and their grandfathers and their great-great-grandfathers before them. Black Lives Matter.
What a wonderful demonstration of stark reality of homelessness. And I guess what it illustrates, people don't think sometimes homelessness that you'd have a car and be homeless and you sleep in your car. Couch surfing, the depiction of homelessness is, you know, someone on the streets, but it takes many forms. And I guess some of the stories, the three stories there, and actually the first young lady I actually met on Friday morning, just gone. I was having a meeting, breakfast meeting, and the person I was dealing with was advocate in the space and was dealing with a young lady, and I actually know her parents. I grew up in the same area, and I spoke to her about her father, and she said, he's here somewhere. And I said to her, I think I just saw him 10 minutes ago. It looked like him. And anyway, she went and she found him and she brought him back to me. And I had a quick chat. And it was just coincidental that I hadn't seen him for 20 years. And here I'm talking to his daughter, and here she's in this video and experiencing this stuff. And we come from the same area in the northern suburbs of Perth. So it's ever present in many of our lives. The next speakers I'd like to introduce is Josh Serafini and Lizzie George. Josh experienced homelessness for periods of time for more than 20 years. And since he was 15 years old, Josh started the initiative with Home, High Opportunity Mutuality Empowerment in Karawara, which is a collaboration between the City of South Perth and local service providers, including Waterford Plaza, Southcare, Richmond Wellbeing, Wooditch Keeler, Life Streams Christian Church, Wooditch, Personal Attributes, and the Department of Housing. Now, Josh is the resident chef and creates themed dinners every month. He's a recent recipient of the Rotary Club of Mill Point's Unsung Hero Award 2020, and Lizzie George is lived experience advocate. And together, the lived experience advocates have prepared a memorial to those who have passed away whilst homeless. So, Josh.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to acknowledge the traditional landowners and Whadjuk Noongar people, elders past and present. So today I sort of run short. Lizzie and George can't be here, unfortunately, so I'm here by myself. And just wanted to share a little bit of my experience on the street with you guys and what had happened. So the memorial bit was, you know, fairly significant for me, where I would stand up and present to United Care West and the Rua Centre, the people who I would lose. In the last 6 years, I've been housed for 3, and I was chronically homeless for 3 right here in the Perth CBD in Northbridge. And, you know, gee, it's quite a scary time, and, you know, there's a lot of learning that goes on and understanding. And one of those bits of understanding is the people that pass away. You know, you're with them every day, and then the next, you know, day they're not here. So for me, I was continuously in that grieving cycle of reliving people that had passed away. And when I got housed, it was quite a another journey in the fact that I had to find myself again, and I had to stay away from the streets, had to, you know, make a 180 direction. And, you know, it was a very painful time because I'd be thinking of all my really close friends that had passed away, some where I'd wake up and they were next to me dead on a consistent base, from murder, suicide, and drug and alcohol overdoses. So when you think about those factors in homelessness, and you know, maybe some of you have lost people, and I'll just use this time quickly to acknowledge Michelle McKenzie and the loss of her mum. My heart goes out to you, Michelle. I understand exactly how that feels. So, you know, once you're stuck in the cycle, it's really hard to get out, as one of my friends on the video was saying at the start. She was in the cycle of, you know, jail, and it's been too long for her to come off the streets. So once you start seeing it from that avenue, and the support around her, you know, the homeless are the hardest to handle out of the whole community service sector, I would say, due to, you know, traumatic events that have happened in their life. So being a lived experience advocate, definitely proud here to share some of that with you this morning, and not get into too much depth, because obviously it's traumatic for myself as I relive those experiences. So can I just have a quick hands of, is there any support workers in the building at the moment? We got one. So you're the lucky one. And, you know, we need those support workers. They're so important for people, you know, in my situation and the people on the video that you saw, to be able to, you know, empower them. And Gordon mentioned quickly about the collaboration. So I got lucky enough, Gordon actually knows my support worker. I came from Salvation Army and moved out to Karawara, Como area. And when I did, I was like, you know, I'm hoping there's a support worker in the neighbourhood. And I met the best support worker. He's an Indigenous fellow named Gary Gowers, who really gave me multiple chances and opportunities to be able to open up and, you know, create a platform of my work, where Gordon briefly mentioned community dinners and also weekly meals up to 250 people, and, you know, working alongside the Rotary. So it's been quite a big journey for me to get here in front of you to be able to present. And if there would be one thing to sort of leave you with, it would be to try not to judge the homeless, as hard as they are to handle, and you know, put your heart and wear your heart on your sleeve going forward. And thank you to everyone that came today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. And I guess it's those real stories and it's about people. And I guess the journey you've been on, Josh, I only met Josh on a Zoom in recent times, and we was on a Zoom meeting one day, and there was this guy, he was laying back on Zoom and he had a pillow behind his head, and he looked pretty relaxed. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to get on Zoom and just be like that, because a lot of us that get on Zoom, I always remember I always get a polo, and I might have shorts on or thongs or whatever, but it's I guess the key thing about Josh, from what I heard this morning and my brief introduction over Zoom with him, is that it's about, you know, getting on with it. You know, you get knocked down and you find yourselves in various situations, but to build yourself back up and to move on with things and to be able to, I'm battling to cater for 20 people without 200 people, you know. So Josh, you're an asset to our community, and I congratulate you again on your recent award from Rotary, and just keep on the journey you are, because you are making a difference, and that's what it's about. So thank you. The next bit I want to speak about is our artwork. We don't have, oh, there it is. I didn't think we had the art piece here, but we have got it on electronically. So Nerily Binder is the artist, and these pieces were created by Nerily Binder, a proud Barimaya Noongar Yamaji woman. Her style is contemporary Aboriginal art. She creates custom art on canvas, murals, sand art, and anything arty. Nerily can be found on Facebook and LinkedIn. And also, with Nerily's permission, she's also experiencing homelessness as we speak, with herself and 4 children, and some other challenges she's experiencing at the moment. So our thoughts go out to Nerily, who couldn't be here today, on the journey that you're on, and hopefully the system as it is can assist you come through this time. So when we look at the art piece, which I think is a very important heading, is called "Where's My Maya?" In Noongar culture and in our culture, is Maya is what we call a place which is now referred to as home. And I guess it's poignant that we have that that as a title of the art pieces. The leaves in the upside down V shape represent a Maya. The yellow spirits outside the Maya are the homeless people, or the disconnected spirits of the homeless, surrounding the Maya, longing for the one to call their own. They are reaching out for help to services around them and above them. The services are supporting them, but sadly it takes a long time and the spirits are left to float around from place to place. In the centre, it represents home to our people. We have a connection to one place, but also to many. We branch out from family or place to place. The big waterhole, that's our country. That's our home, our connection to our spirit. But we also can go wandering and go be in other areas and still be accepted as our home. We connect to many people all over. The 3 spirits represent the people on their own heart journey. Spirits from the past, the present and the future, as they had to travel through the stage of this journey from homelessness to having a happy home of their own. The yellow and blue dots represent Shelter WA and acknowledges the 40 years they have given. Below is our peaceful land, our budja, which we all have to live on, our foundation, which we all hope everyone has a place to call home on. The trees on country represents the land, the strong connection within us to country. Our family roots, the symbol that shows our interconnection to each other. The other up is the spirit of the life flows. The 2 spirits are flowing like water, like in life. They continue to flow and keep moving forward. They are people whose spirits have been down, but they found their strength and now they have strong foundations. One represents the spirits of the people who need help, and the other is the spirits of the people who help others. Each spirit is strong, maintaining balance through sharing of information, because they never give up. The long-term goal can now be achieved. The spirits both continue to reach out and grow. The waterholes and fires connect them to all the places that they got help from throughout their journeys. A symbol of starting over, moving forward and looking for growth and change. Life. They all find their way and are all in balance with each other in the end. So 2 beautiful depictions of art pieces that highlight Homelessness Week for 2020. Just bear with me. Our next speaker, I'd like to introduce. I've had a few dealings with the speaker, and currently we've just started to become co-chairs of the COVID-19 Homelessness Task Force WA, and I'm speaking of Emma Colombera from she's currently the Director of Housing and Homelessness at the Department of Communities. Emma has had more than 12 years experience working in a variety of state government policy positions at the Department of Treasury and Finance, as well as the Department of Premier and Cabinet, prior to her time at Communities. She holds a Master of Public Administration and a Master of Business Administration. She was instrumental in driving the planning, consultation and development of West Australia's All Paths Lead to a Home, West Australia's 10-year strategy on homelessness, 2020 to 2030. The strategy is a whole of government plan, setting the direction for all levels of government, business and the community sector in responding to and preventing homelessness in Western Australia. The formation of the strategy would not have been possible without her leadership and engagement with the sector and ability to deliver positive outcomes for vulnerable people within our community. More recently, she has been involved in the work performed by the COVID-19 Task Force on Homelessness in responding to the pandemic at the height of the crisis. I introduce you, Emma. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. That was quite a introduction. I don't know where you got that bio from, but I'll be checking that next time. Good morning, everyone. I'd firstly like to say that I'm really quite honoured to be sharing the stage with Gordon and Josh, and I'm not sure where to start really, following on from those videos of people who are experiencing homelessness every day and just recognising what that really is like, what that looks like. And Josh, a comment that you made around try not to judge, it's just so important. And if there's one thing I think we can really achieve in Homelessness Week, it's to bust some of those myths around how people get to become homeless, and you know, once we can really understand that and take it apart, then we can start to find better solutions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the creation of the 10-year strategy on homelessness and all the work that was done to get us there, and just trace back a little bit, because we had three major sources of input to that work, and the first one was voice of lived experience, and that has infiltrated all of the planning that we've done. And it's kind of hard to get up here and talk about you know, strategic planning and the sort of the bureaucratic processes of government in light of the stories that we've just heard and that beautiful artwork that Gordon took us through. But this strategy, I'm personally really proud of this. I acknowledge our Director General, Michelle Andrews of the Department of Communities, who was so supportive and showed such leadership and guidance through this work. But what we have done through this planning process, the release of the strategy, and today the release online of the first 5-year action plan, is enabled government to make really significant investment. And that investment, we are really conscious and working through an outcomes framework and some other pieces to make sure that it gets to where it needs to go, that it actually supports Aboriginal people. Reducing Aboriginal homelessness is one of the key priorities of the strategy. And we didn't, you know, we still are looking for answers. We're still working with Gordon and with others to find ways to make our services and the supports better and more. And we know that happens through collaboration. We know that the sector and the services that are out there at the moment are doing an incredible job, but there's more to be done. And so with that, I would encourage you all to have a look at the action plan online. You know, I'm always around to have a chat and welcome you to, you know, get in contact with me to discuss it. And I'm really looking forward to, I'm going to keep this very short and sweet, because I think the Minister covered off on a lot of the things that we've done in this space and the huge investment and commitment that this government has made to reducing homelessness. So I won't repeat what's already been said, but I wouldn't extend an invitation for anyone who wants to come and have a chat about the action plan. We're very proud to be launching it today. And also the online portal, which the Minister referred to, which is a piece of IT infrastructure that's going to enable us to to get much better visibility of what's out there, not just services that are funded by government, but all the great work that goes on in the volunteering space and in the community more broadly. So I'm going to hand back to Gordon, and I wish you all a fantastic Homelessness Week. And I really hope that together we can raise awareness of the issue and continue on this journey to getting some better outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And I know the work that Emma's done and put into this. It not only is about working in a system that sometimes can be very hard. I've been in the system where Emma is, and it's not always easy, but I know her work and dedication over time has been very good, and it's another person on this journey that's trying to end and make some sense of this situation that we're dealing with around homelessness. So once again, thank you, Emma. The next speaker I'd like to introduce is Lisa Kazalac. Lisa is Acting CEO and Head of Policy and Sector Development, Shelter WA. Lisa is an outcomes-focused professional with over 15 years' experience in corporate, public sector and not-for-profit organisations. Lisa developed and leveraged her core skills of communication, stakeholder engagement, influence and research into a lasting public policy and advocacy career. Lisa.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm using technology this morning for my speeches, so yeah, here we go. Wow. All right, so, oh my goodness, I'm not a crier and I've just been like continually touching my eyes over those videos. Excuse me. Really powerful. And I did tell you this morning it was worth getting up here nice and early in the cold, right? Okay, so right now I get to wear my normal hat, which is being the head of policy and sector development, and it truly is a privilege to be at Shelter, and I'm very excited. I'm coming up to 2 years next week, which is wonderful. Gordon, thanks for that introduction. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is a really great piece of work that Shelter WA, the WA Alliance to End Homelessness, which is a sector-led advocacy movement, I suppose, Deb. That's right, it's a movement, yep. And we've done some work in the last couple of months that we pretty speedily. COVID's presented an opportunity to really get a sense from the community about what people understand and their perceptions and their attitudes towards homelessness across the whole of WA. And we've been doing this work in conjunction with a remarkable professional, Julia Zivanovic, who runs Knowledge Solutions, who's actually joining us from Queensland because she's in some kind of quarantine over there herself. So thank you, Julia, for joining us this morning. So this work is really important, and to make change and to make meaningful transformational change, we need evidence, right? It's not just statistical evidence, it's qualitative evidence. It's the stories that Josh presented today, it's the stories of the videos this morning, and it's the stories that there are in this room right now. There's a few of our lived experience members of the community here, which I look forward to you all meeting in the next session we have at 9:30. But the evidence is really important, and I have a really blessed and privileged role as an advocate in a professional capacity for this sector, and I'm very passionate about having a home, and I think that's the most important thing that we can have as human beings. So the work that we've just recently done and what I'm sharing with you this morning are some really highlight top-level figures that have come through from this study. And you'll see on the screen behind me, I'll just walk you through some of the top ones and then share with you just some thoughts around what we're seeing so far. So pleasingly, 94% of the people who were surveyed during this survey realises that homelessness can actually occur outside of a person's control. 89% think and acknowledge that it can happen to anyone. And I think what this pandemic has demonstrated to all of us is that we are all vulnerable. And that's sad and challenging, but I think that also presents an opportunity, which is exciting. And 2/3 of those people who were surveyed agreed that nobody actually chooses to be homeless. Emma spoke about let's busting some myths during this week, and I think people talk about, well, Josh, you must have chosen to not have a home, right? That's rubbish. Life is challenging and difficult, and as we've seen through COVID, it can happen to anyone, and it's happening to more people. Community views are a little distorted about what homelessness actually is, and so this is the area where we need to make a bit of awareness and education change, and Gordon spoke about it this morning. The ABS statistics from the last census in 2016 show that the predominant cause of homelessness is overcrowding. And we know that overcrowding is a very serious issue in regional and remote Australia and WA, and affects the majority of Aboriginal people who are represented in the statistics. The community thought, though, that homelessness was just about living in your car. It was just about sleeping on the streets and living in a refuge. But we actually know that homelessness presents itself in other forms. Couch surfing, which we find a lot of young people find themselves in those situations, and the work of the Youth Advisory Council of WA here through Ross Wortham can talk to you at length about his lived experience advocates' experiences of homelessness. And we know from early surveys that youth homelessness through COVID is increasing. And we also know that it's the highest group of unemployment people during COVID. The other disparities are that the understanding of the causes of homelessness are important to get a handle on. And the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare data of their specialist homelessness services that comes out every January demonstrates that family and domestic violence is the largest reason that someone will experience homelessness. And we had Katie Crystal here this morning, the acting CEO of the Women's Council. The other reasons that the data shows is that financial difficulties. So imagine losing your job during COVID, and luckily we've had some increases in income support. But the other one is housing crisis. So we've already heard today that having a home is the solution, but having a home with the supports, because as Josh spoke about this morning, it's moving into a home is challenging, right? When you haven't had one for a long period of time. People in the community across our state spoke about 3 main suggestions, and these were the most commonly recorded through the survey, on how we can actually end homelessness in our community. Provide some financial support and counselling. And we have our colleagues here from the Financial Counselling Association of WA with us this morning as well, who live in the same offices as we do, which is quite pleasant for morning teas. But obviously we need more public and social housing. You saw the stats, 14,000 people on the wait list. That's just those who can actually meet the criteria to be on the wait list. We actually know through a study done last year by the University of New South Wales Cities Future Centre that there's actually a demand currently, well, as of 2019, of almost 59,000 households who need social and affordable housing. The other reason that people thought we could end homelessness is to actually understand the underlying issues in our community. So that speaks to mental health issues, alcohol and other drug issues, family domestic violence and other things that we have to grapple with as a community. And it is a community issue. We've started to look at those headline numbers, and some of the things that came through the survey, which I think are really encouraging, is that people through COVID have now understood that homelessness is a reality for anyone, that the community needs to be brought into the solutions, but more importantly, and what I think is really exciting, is that the voice of lived experience must be embedded in that process to coming up with those solutions. The other theme that I think is really important to acknowledge is the impact that COVID and homelessness has in the interaction with mental illness and experiences of mental ill health. And that's something that I know that Taryn Harvey and her team at the WA Association for Mental Health are focusing on with their current state election campaign around Prevent, Support and Heal. You can see that housing is the way that we actually get to deal with these issues in reality. They're probably the two main takeaways that Julia shared with me as the person who was doing the study for us and the analysis, and I wanted to share those high-level findings with you this morning. We will be releasing very detailed analysis over the coming weeks, particularly as we move into a campaign period for a state election in March 2021, which I hope you will all join us on that journey as more information about that comes out. But that's what I wanted to share with you at the moment. And I'm more than happy to speak to you over our break periods and answer any questions around the evidence. But the evidence means nothing without the voices of lived experience. So we are nearing the close of what's been, I think, a marvellous launch, Gordon. And so I get to have the last say. Most of my friends know that I'm very good at that. So what I'd like to talk about is some closing thoughts that I'd like to leave with you and to reinforce a really important message that Gordon's given us and a challenge he's presented to us today. I'd like to just reinforce that I know Michelle would love to be here and is frustrated, and as I am equally frustrated that she's not here, but we've been doing our best. And I'm here to provide some formal remarks on her behalf. I just alluded to what the data was saying in the survey we did, and I'm an eternal optimist. So I actually think that whilst COVID in the last 6 months or so has presented extraordinary challenges for us as individuals and as members of the community here in WA, I actually firmly believe that it's affording us what's probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that opportunity is to change the systems and institutions that govern our society. That's a pretty bold statement, I know. But there's nothing like having a transformational vision, yeah? It's important that we take up the challenge put to you today by Chair of Homelessness Week 2020, Board Member of Shelter WA and proud Noongar man Gordon Cole. And I'll just quote, because I have his speech notes, the challenge that he put forward to us today. In Gordon's words, the housing system is broken and there needs to be a paradigm shift. Change is needed to increase Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's control and participation at all levels of government, industry and community sector. And my bit I'm adding is to end homelessness for our First Nations people and also non-First Nations people. Shelter WA is celebrating, or we're celebrating, our 40th birthday this year in November, so look out for those invitations. We're doing something pretty fabulous. But we have such an important role as the peak body for social and affordable housing and ending homelessness and in driving housing system change. And we take that role on really seriously, and we're passionate, and we're a teeny tiny team, in case you didn't know, but we all produce some pretty remarkable stuff. I want to say thank you all for being here this morning. And I know some of you are joining us for the next session at 9:30, but I'd like to actually now give my thanks to a number of people who have shared this morning with us and who have helped to bring today to fruition. First of all, I hadn't met Fred Penny till this morning, and it was beautiful to hear his welcome and to hear his words, what struck me was the word home. So let's remember what a home means. I'd also like to thank Minister McGurk, who I believe has gone to Cabinet this morning to do some marvellous work, I'm sure. And I would like to thank her for coming here this morning and launching our week. And I'd thank her and her team and Josh Cunliffe here, her advisor on homelessness, is with us this morning. And we're excited about continuing to work with her and the McGowan government to end homelessness through the first strategy that they've released last November, All Paths Lead to a Home, as a beginning position, not the final one. I'd like to thank our speakers today, and it'll be my pleasure at the end of these proceedings to present you, with Gordon's assistance, the beautiful fire sticks from Bellcox at Drilling Dreaming. I'd like to really thank Josh Serafini. Josh, it's been marvellous getting to know you over the last 18 months and working with you, and we've got more work to do. Emma, you're acting in the Executive Director role of Housing and Homelessness. And again, it's always a pleasure to work with you too. And of course, Gordon, it's been wonderful having you on the board since October last year, and a pleasure to work with you. Neroli's work that Gordon spoke about and reflected on this morning was pretty remarkable. Her creative expression is phenomenal, and her lived experience that she shared with us is sad, but the reality of the lives of many people. I need to thank our sponsors, and that's an important part. So thank you to the Department of Communities and to Beyond Bank. Unfortunately, our chair, Kathleen Gregory AM, couldn't be with us here this morning, but I do acknowledge that we have a few of our board members here, so thank you for making the time to help us celebrate and start this week. There are a couple of volunteers here today that I must acknowledge, and it's really delightful in the last few weeks in my acting role to have the support of the sector in the way that it's been. And thank you, Louise, for being our registration guru. Louise is CEO at the WA Council of Social Services, so really appreciate you making the time for us this morning, Louise, and helping the team out. And look, we're a big family. Like, whilst we're small at Shelter, we're a big family. So I managed to rope my mother in to come and help us this week. So Mum, thank you. Elizabeth, her name is. So thanks for coming and helping us this morning. She got up much earlier than she normally does, being a lady of leisure and in retirement. But I think the most critical thanks must go to the best team I've ever worked with. So if you could stand up, well, Michelle's going to wave from where she is. But if you could stand up, Janae, and sort of move forward into the centre. Heather, Royston, and John from the Alliance. This has been a mammoth task. So thank you. And I'd just like you all to acknowledge their work today. What a morning and what an exciting week we've got in front of us. Everybody has a right to housing that enables them to thrive, and that's our vision at Shelter WA, and that will never change. Enjoy your Homelessness Week 2020. There's lots of events, there's lots of opportunities for yarning, so let's be brave and courageous and have those tough conversations. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to re-welcoming those who are sticking around for the 9:30 session. We are literally 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Now, did I not say at the start that I'm an excellent timekeeper? We didn't even have to use the signs that Heather prepared that said 5 minutes, 2 minutes, stop. So you've now got 5 minutes back in your day, but what I'd really like you to do is spend the next 5 to 20 minutes, if you're sticking around with us for 9:30, please have some brekkie. It's a lovely breakfast, have another coffee and network, and let's start those yarning conversations as we go forward. Thank you.